Please note, the following story contains very graphic and disturbing content. Viewer discretion is advised. Chapter 6. Reunion. Hiddleston had peeked out of the door with his shotgun. He felt tension, then was pulled back by his shotgun out of the door. He cursed and drew his knife towards the assailant. The man in the shadows had a gun drawn out in the light. Hiddleston was in the light and could see that his knife was too far away. He would only be able to strike long after the man shot him. He stood in the light, waiting for the shadow's reaction. Breaking the silence, an accented voice whispered, "Hiddleston?" It was McKenna's. "Boss," Hiddleston spoke. "You're alive." "Where are the others?" the squad leader asked. "I don't know. Fire Team 1 is infected by whatever that stuff is. Wilson is dead. I lost contact with the rest of the team. If they're anywhere, it's probably the bottom floor." McKenna sighed and checked his ammunition. "How many rounds you got?" "I got 6 shells." He checked his MP5 and his spare mags. "Half a clip, 1 spare, and a full pistol mag. You?" "I burned through most of my ammunition," the lieutenant said while he checked himself over. "I have an empty shotgun, 2 shells, my MP5 is dry, and I might have 1 pistol mag and half in the pistol." "We're not ready for a full engagement. Move through the rooms?" Hiddleston suggested. "Good idea, but we still run the risk of finding rooms full of them," McInnes responded. "Either way, let's get going." McInnes dropped his axe over his shoulder and into his hands. He aimed down the hall with his MP5 set to single shot. They needed to conserve ammunition however they could. If they ran out, they were going to be fighting these things with their hands, and that's not exactly a smart idea if there was a group of them attacking. "We need to find the doctor and figure out how to get out of here. If he knows about these things, then he knows how to get out," McInnes stated. He turned the corner, axe against his shoulders, ready to swing. He peeked to check the hall. The dimly lit exit sign was still running on emergency power, and there were the stairs. He stepped out into the hall, and he heard a snicker. "Did you?" Hiddleston nodded. He looked around, but all paths were clear. McInnes looked up into the shadow of the ceiling. He saw light bounce off of a small object on the ceiling. A thin, reflective rod, and a glowing liquid. He raised his axe and nodded to Hiddleston. He looked up again, and heard laughter, when the patient dropped onto him. Richards had grabbed the blind patient from behind. It instinctively swung the saw down on Richard's right arm. He felt the blade slice right through his skin and flesh, burning and hitting the bone. The saw rubbing and slicing through the bone made him nauseous, and he felt the vomit rise up his throat. "God!" he screamed. The saw kept slicing, through the bone and out the other side, slicing his arm clean off. Richards pulled back, the stump below his elbow bleeding profusely. Jeremy Rico had stirred and sprung towards the patient. He fired his pistol at the creature, each shot missing when the patient dodged it. He pistol-whipped the patient down and grabbed the saw from its hands. The patient gripped his scalpel and stabbed into Rico's wound. He cursed and brought the saw towards its throat. It kept trying to twist the scalpel inside, but it missed anything vital. Rico screamed, "I'm gonna murder you, you piece of filth!" With one arm, the patient attempted to hold the saw back, and Richards got up, using his left arm and body to hold the patient's arm down. It squealed and screeched, only attracting more of the infected who were just entering the room. Rico brought the saw into the patient's throat and sliced down. The saw cut right through the throat and decapitated the patient, sparks beginning to fly when it hit the floor. Rico swung up and brought the saw towards the infected, swinging it at their brains. Richards reached for his handgun. Rico swung the saw into a patient's ribs and it jammed inside. He pulled out his knife, and tackling the infected, bringing them all down, he stabbed into their heads. "Rico!" a voice called. Rico turned and saw Officer Mendez firing at several infected down the hall. "Mendez!" Rico screamed. Richard stood at the end of the hall, a stump where his elbow was. Rico sprang up and attempted to help Richards. Mendez killed the last infected and ran down to both of them. Burnside had heard the commotion and began removing obstacles from the barricade. "What if it's a trap?" the doctor told him. "I damn well heard them, didn't you?" Burnside answered. He pulled the table back and unlocked the door. He opened it a creak and saw Mendez running towards the end of the hall. Burnside and the doctor left the room and sprinted down the hall towards them. Burnside turned the corner and saw Richards on the ground, Mendez and Rico trying to stop the bleeding. "Crap!" Burnside spoke. Rico and Mendez turned towards him. "Burnside!" Rico yelled. "We need a cloth or something!" Burnside ripped his handkerchief from his pocket. "Here, use this!" Chapter 7. Descent. McInnes swung the axe, but missed. It was Hiddleston who grabbed the infected off of him and held him down. McInnes picked up his axe and swung it into the head of the patient. The top of the head slid right off, and the patient died. McInnes and Hiddleston ran towards the stairs and sprinted down. Floor 4. McInnes was surprised. Aside from a few common infected, the place was empty. There used to be hordes of them wandering the halls. They entered the 4th floor, and a lone infected wandered the hallway. McInnes swung his axe into it and kept moving, Hiddleston following. The patient wasn't dead yet, and when it screamed with its last breath, half its face broken off, the doors of floor 4 all opened. "Room to room wasn't a great idea, I guess," McInnes said. "Run!" Hiddleston screamed. They started running, the infected opening up the doors and following. Some were running behind them, but the majority of the patients were walking. It was the 3 shots that rang out and the bullets that hit the wall in front of them that caused McInnes and Hiddleston to run faster. "Fire Team 1? McInnes sighed. "Yeah," Hiddleston growled. They turned left and went down the hall. They took another left on the corner and found an elevator shaft. "Get it open," McInnes said, handing Hiddleston his axe to wedge in between the doors. McInnes pulled his handgun out. 4 runners came around the corner. He fired 2 shots, both finding their way into their targets. The other 2 were mere meters away from him when he fired the 3rd, 4th, and 5th shot. 2 of them hit the 3rd runner, but the 5th missed, ricocheting against the wall. He fired again, 2 shots. As if time froze, he watched the bullet graze the ear of the running patient, a mere 4 feet away down the hall, and the final bullet find its way into the patient's cranium. He watched it drop to the ground, sliding across the floor, and laying dead at his feet. A walking patient turned the corner. McInnes squeezed the trigger and his gun clicked. He reached down for his last pistol magazine when Hiddleston reported that he had gotten the door open, but broke the axe in the process. McInnes turned around and started running when he felt several thumps against his back and a piercing pain at the end. He cursed, reloaded his weapon, slid on the ground, and flipped over. The bullets that had hit his body armor and punctured his back pressed in. He aimed back at the infected SWAT officer, who had adjusted his aim lower to McInnes. McInnes fired first, 4 rounds at the head. 2 shots bounced off the officer's helmet, but the other 2 hit right between the eyes. The infected commando fell on top of McInnes, and Hiddleston turned the corner, shotgun in hand. "I'm hit," McInnes told Hiddleston. Hiddleston knelt down at McInnes to lift the body off of him, as the last SWAT commando turned the corner, knife in hand. He charged at Hiddleston, and Hiddleston swung his combat knife. The commando tackled Hiddleston at the waist, going low and swinging Hiddleston upward. Hiddleston lifted his knife and plunged it into the back of the commando's neck. The commando swung him over and reached for the knife in its neck. Hiddleston recovered and reached for his shotgun. The commando jumped onto Hiddleston, attempting to wrestle the gun from his hands. McInnes lifted the body off of him and noticed more infected had turned the corner and were only a couple meters away. He lifted the body up and threw it on top of the mob, causing them to fall. He reached for his magnum and turned around, seeing the commando and Hiddleston fighting. The commando stopped wrestling the shotgun and attempted to bring his knife down on Hiddleston's head. Hiddleston grabbed the commando's hand, which clasped the knife, and pulled his shotgun into the body of the commando. The commando was getting the knife closer into Hiddleston's face, as Hiddleston had clutched the shotgun against the commando. The knife slowly cut into Hiddleston's cheek, and Hiddleston fired the shotgun into the body of the SWAT officer. The officer fell back, and the blade plunged in and ripped, slicing Hiddleston's cheek apart. Hiddleston fell backwards, and McInnes pulled his shotgun off of his sling, slamming the stock into the officer's head. When the officer fell backwards, Hiddleston fired his shotgun into the officer's face, collapsing it. McInnes was grabbed from behind. He slammed backwards to get the hands off of him, and turned around, shotgun raised. The infected had already recovered, Its arms reached towards him. He attempted to fire, his shotgun only clicking. Crap! Hiddleston fired his shotgun into the infected. Run! He screamed. McInnes turned around with the sergeant and started running. Hiddleston began loading his 2 remaining rounds into the shotgun. When they reached the elevator, McInnes yelled to Hiddleston to go first. You've got no ammunition, Hiddleston responded. That's an order, McInnes yells. McInnes shoved Hiddleston down the shaft, who landed on top of the broken elevator. McInnes loaded the last shell into his shotgun and turned around. A hand covered his face and pulled him forward. What's up, everybody? This is the Lone Wolf here. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to Act Number 4 of Hostage Situation. If you haven't listened to any of the 3 previous acts yet, there will be links to all 3 videos in the description below. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, especially if you're new to my channel. Turn on the bell for notifications and join the Lone Wolf Pack. If anybody wishes to reach out to me regarding personal stories, recommendations, advice about the channel, or just to say hello, feel free to leave a comment on any of my videos, or send me a DM on any of my social media platforms. There will be links to my email, Twitter, Discord server, Instagram, and TikTok in the description. For anybody interested in the music, all of the tracks used in this video will be listed in the description below, along with links to the artists that created them. Until next time, stay spooky. And remember, the hunt begins when the moon is full. See you soon.